Hi there, I'm Drew Badger, the world's #1 English fluency guide, and in this video you will discover how to learn the meanings of English words and phrases like a native so that you can communicate more fluently, confidently, and automatically. Does that sound good? Well, in this video, this is actually a follow-up or a continuation to my extremely popular video, How to Get Fluent with One Simple Trick. Now, I made that video a while ago, and so far it's gotten about 16 million views right here on YouTube, so if you've watched it already, thank you very much. The idea behind that video is it's really very simple, and it's actually the foundation of everything I do, which is if you want to become a fluent speaker, you have to learn like a native. And so this is a really simple idea, and just changing the way you think instead of learning like a student, and I'll talk more about it in this video, you need to learn more like a native speaker. Now, there are different ways you can do this. Part of it is how you learn grammar or how you learn vocabulary. You're learning all the same things that you might learn in a classroom, but you're learning them the way a native learns them, so you develop the habits that help you communicate automatically. Now, what I want to talk about in this video, because in that previous one trick video I was talking about learning vocabulary the same way natives do. So if you learn the most commonly used conversational speech instead of learning all the difficult things that you'll find in textbooks or what maybe you might learn for a test, if you learn just the regular everyday speech, and that's the slang and idioms, things like that, that you're learning from actual conversations, this is going to help you learn to become a fluent speaker much faster, because you're only focusing on really the most conversational speech and the things that people use most often rather than things that people won't be using. But today I wanted to talk about something really important and go deeper into this idea for vocabulary building and how to learn more like a native. Because this idea is probably the biggest mistake that learners make when they're trying to learn another language. And what they're doing is trying to translate, or they're trying to learn through their native language by studying English or whatever language they happen to be speaking. Now, I speak Japanese as well, so I'm going to use Japanese in this example. I also think it's a good example because probably a lot of people watching this video do not speak Japanese. If you do, fantastic. Maybe you can even correct my Japanese if I make a mistake. But basically, the idea of learning the core vocabulary means that you're learning everything in English as opposed to learning things through a different language. So let's take just imagine I'm a Japanese speaker learning English, and I'm doing the traditional, typical thing. I'm studying English in a classroom, and I'm learning it all through English. And I know the word hashiru, and this just means to run in English. Again, I'm just giving a very simple definition of what this means, but a Japanese speaker, or you, again, it doesn't matter, I'm just using Japanese as an example, but you would learn this, so you would already know this in your native language, and then you would try to learn it by connecting it with the English word. Now, the reason that this is a really difficult thing to do is because this word doesn't always mean this. And there are actually many different meanings of the word run. So if you want to actually think about it like a native speaker, and if you can learn these different meanings of run, then you understand the core meaning of run. And the reason that's important is because it helps you think like a native so you communicate like a native. So what's happening for most people is that they're beginning by thinking in their native language. They want to say a word like hashiru. I want to run. And so they're thinking about something, and they would translate in their head to something like run a race. Now, this is a correct definition of it, so you can say hashiru and the same thing for run, like I'm running in a race. But there are so many more definitions of this that you don't understand if you're only trying to connect one meaning of this, and it's not the core meaning of run, it's just one definition of it. Because most words, and it's probably the same in your native language as well, you have many different meanings, and there's actually as you understand all of them, you begin to understand the core meaning of that particular verb. So again, we're starting with the Japanese here, and we're moving to something like run a race. But let's talk about run for a minute, thinking like a native speaker. Now, when a child is learning the word run in English, often one of the first things that they hear is running a race, and that same idea, because children like to run and their parents say, don't run in the house, stop running. But as they get older, they begin to add to that definition and actually get their kind of broader understanding or making it deeper by not just understanding one way of using run, but many different ways of using it. And these are even just some examples. So let's just talk very quickly about some of these. I don't want to give you too many, but the point is that instead of trying to move from here to here, what a native does is they're moving from here to here, and here, 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 here. And they're developing, all in English, a strong understanding of what the core verb meaning. And this isn't just verbs, it's for anything. Really, the vocabulary that you're learning, it could be a word or a phrase or anything like that, but often it will have more than just one meaning. And so if you learn these things in English as opposed to learning it through your native language, this is what's going to help you speak without translating. So you don't have to think about what this word is or what that is, because you understand the core meaning and you can apply it in different situations, which is what we'll do now. So first we've got moving faster than walking, and hopefully you can read this. My writing is really not the best. But to move faster than walking, we've got maybe a phrase like to run a race. So I'm physically on my legs moving faster than walking. Or a boat or something could be moving, like a car is like running very quickly. And again, even if something doesn't have legs, like a boat on water doesn't have any legs, but we still talk about it running along the surface of a water. So something like along the surface of water. And we've got, again, an example of something that's moving faster. We don't really say a boat walks, but a lot of things have this idea of running because we're talking about just the fast motion of something. But we can also talk about the idea of run as a like kind of a fast or continuous or repeating thing, the same way an engine is running around and around and around. So you can talk about like how long, what's the run time of a movie, because we're talking about like how long it's, again, continuing to move or that repetition of something over and over again. Like when someone is running their mouth, they're talking over and over and over and over again. Now, maybe they're saying different things, but it's a continuous action, and we talk about someone running their mouth. Now, we don't really talk about people walking their mouth, but again, you're starting to strengthen this idea of run, what it really means as a native, rather than trying to connect it with something in your native language. You see the difference there? So again, I'm starting here with kind of the basic idea of run from maybe, again, a child's example. So I'm speaking with my daughter and I say, don't run in the house. And she understands, I mean, okay, you're physically running. But then she'll hear things like, oh, like you're running your mouth right now, or the car is running outside. Even though the car isn't physically moving anywhere, we're talking about the engine is running. So the engine is turning right there. So these examples, again, it's slightly two different things, but you see how you're deepening, you're broadening your idea of what this word means. And so that's a really great way for you not just to try to connect these two things here, but you're drawing connections between all of these different words, and this is what creates your idea in your mind of what run really means, the core meaning of run. Now, I'm not going to give you a definition of that because it's not really necessary. The point, and I couldn't even really give you one because really there are so many different things, but they all have a general idea, and understanding that general idea of a word is really what it means to think like a native when you're learning vocabulary. So again, we're not moving from here to here. We're moving from here to here to here to here to here to here to here. And as we do that, we strengthen our understanding of what that means, and we begin to think like things or think about things like a native rather than someone who's translating. Because when you translate, then you have to think about things in your native language and then think about that in English, and you're not quite sure what it would mean because, again, you don't have a core understanding of what a verb is. You're just trying to take one idea and connect it with something in your native language. So the point here is to learn the different core meanings or the different kind of meanings or the usages of this so that you understand the core meaning, and that's what's going to help you communicate like a native. So continuing here, we've got something like to control or operate. So if I'm the person who's controlling something or operating something, this is why we talk about running a business, or we talk about running a machine. So I'm physically operating something. I'm running this machine over here. So again, these are different usages of run, but they're related. And as you learn these, you broaden your idea of what run means so that you can really make more connections between all of these things, and then that helps you communicate much more fluently. The last one we'll cover, and again, there are more examples and even more definitions of these, but you can see how as we add more and more, it becomes more clear what the actual core definition of run is. And so you can begin to, if you hear run in different situations, it begins to become obvious what that means. So we don't mean walk, we probably mean something that's moving quite quickly or maybe repeating, something like that. So we're getting a core idea and thinking like a native speaker, not like someone who's translating something from their language to another one. So here we'll go down to nagareru, and this just means like flow. And again, I don't want to give a definition and do the opposite of what I'm asking people to do, but these are just simple examples of how this would work when you're translating from one language, from one understanding of a word to something else. So if you just learn hashiru and you're learning that as run a race, then you don't really understand, okay, wow, like, so someone can run a business also, or you can run your mouth if you're talking too much, or a boat can be running underwater, or a machine can be running, or any of these other examples. Or we can be talking about the flow of something, like the running flow of water, or your toilet is running if it's continuously having more water come out because there's a problem with your toilet. You can, again, have a runny nose, and this is like when a child is sick and you've got snot and stuff continuing to come out of their nose. So if you don't learn these things, if you hear you're making a connection as a non-native speaker when you learn hashiru, and then you're connecting that to run a race, then you hear something like runny nose, you think like, well, that's interesting, like the nose is not running. That doesn't make any sense. And even when you learn things like this as a native speaker, like a classic joke that young English-speaking children learn is like talking about a nose that's like going too quickly because it's always runny. And so it's a joke connecting these two different ideas of what run is. And as a native, you learn that. And if you can do that same kind of thing, and this is how you do it, again, you're connecting with the different ideas of a particular word or phrase instead of trying to do it through this language. So again, you've got nagareru, and you're moving this to something like run. So like hana ga nagareru, like like your nose is running. You got stuff coming out of your nose. But you don't make the connection between these two things in your native language. I mean, you might. It depends on what the words are in your native language, but you do make that connection in English. And this connection is what's important to help you communicate automatically. Does that make sense? So what you should stop doing, if you're doing it right now, I know a lot of learners are still trying to use their native language to learn English. And if you can understand this video, you do not need any more of your native language in order to learn English. You just need to learn at a level that's easy enough for you to understand all the things in English the same way a native English-speaking child does. So this is why I say you should be learning like a child, in the sense that you want to be connecting the different understandings of things so that you develop this understanding here of what does run really mean, and how can I apply that in these different situations. And as you do that, you're developing the thinking of a native speaker so you communicate like one. Do you see how amazing that is? So instead of trying to think about one connection here, I'm making all these different connections between these different things, and that's what's going to help me communicate like a native speaker. So it's the same thing I do in Japanese. I'm not trying to do this. I'm trying to look for other definitions, like what else can run. So I think about that. When I learn a new word, I ask people, what other situations could I use this in? Or is there some kind of joke or something else that's connected with this? Because I'm trying to make those connections with other things in Japanese, not trying to translate them through English. And this is how you develop the mind of a native speaker, even if maybe your pronunciation isn't perfect or you still make some mistakes, but like your whole language learning world changes when you begin learning like this, all in English. And this is why everything I do is taught in English, even from very, very young beginners or older beginners. I'm teaching everything in English. Obviously, I'm making it very simple for beginners, and this is just, again, a much easier way of doing it than trying to connect individual words from your language into something like English. Does that make sense? So hopefully this idea is just like, hopefully it changes your mind. If you're not already learning everything in English, if you're watching videos like in Portuguese about how to learn English, you can learn some great tips from other people about how to do that. But if you want to actually communicate like a native speaker, again, like your accent or other things like that are not so important. But if you actually want to think like that, like my Japanese, sometimes I'll mispronounce a word or something, but I can think like a Japanese speaker about certain things. And so I'll watch a TV show about, like, why do we use this word or not that word? And I think, oh, wow, that's really interesting. And I can watch that and follow that. Like, there was a show on I was watching last night talking about different kinds of noodle dishes and why we use like one word for delivery of this kind of food and why we use one word for delivery of another kind of food. It's just interesting stuff, but that's what it means to learn like a native. And if you do this, you get to communicate like one, because you're no longer trying to think about your thing in whatever your word is and then think about it here and then translate back. You don't have to do that. You're understanding everything. And as you learn this way, look, run a race. I'm also learning some grammar, some pronunciation. I'm improving my listening, and I'm developing all my skills just by doing this. And I don't want to talk about this too much, but I want to leave you with one way that's a really fantastic way to improve your understanding of core verbs, or even just core understanding of any vocabulary, really. But a fantastic way to do this is with phrasal verbs. Now, I'm like the phrasal verb guy. I love to teach phrasal verbs, and these are things like pick up or put down or turn off or turn on. And this is one of the most important things. Actually, I think it's the most important thing you should be learning as a non-native speaker of English, because this is how children learn to communicate. And it's also a fantastic way to balloon up your vocabulary. That was a great phrasal verb right there, to balloon up, to make something grow much bigger very quickly. So on phrasal verbs, I'll just give a few examples of things using run, and you can see how these different ideas of run, they're all connected, but again, they're slightly different. But as you learn them, you're starting to, again, broaden your idea, your understanding of what run means, so you can think about these things more like a native, so you communicate like one. So a few of these right here, we've got run up a bill. Now imagine I'm going to a store and I see all of these great things. I'm like a young child in a toy store and I want to buy this thing and that thing and this thing. And there is a man walking next to me and he's writing down the price of everything. And you can see I'm running up a bill. So to run up means it's increasing quickly and the price of something is moving. So this is more kind of a general idea of moving faster than walking. But to run up a bill means I was quickly spending a lot of money or the prices of things are very high and I'm quickly having to spend a lot of money to afford them. So that's when you run up a bill. So if I just go to a store and buy two things and it's not very expensive, I'm not running up a bill. There's not many things that are all increasing the price or whatever I have to pay all at one time. Next, to run over someone. Now this is kind of a sad example, but if I'm driving my car and I hit someone and I physically run over them, oh no, I'm actually going over that person. I'm hitting that person, even if they bounce off the car and move to a different place or something. We still call that running over someone. So to run over someone, that's a very simple example of, again, you're moving quickly, fast over some speed or again, some like a street or something, and then you're moving over someone because you hit them and maybe you actually drive over that person or hit them out of the way, something like that. And then we've got run down a list. Again, I'm moving quickly through a list of something. If I had 20 vocabulary words and I wanted to teach them all to you very quickly, I could run down a list. There's this, and this. I'm quickly going down the list and I'm running down the list as opposed to just going through each example and taking my time and being very slow with it. So if you want to run down something, let me run down a list of the things that we're going to be doing today. So today we're going to do this and that and that and that and that, and I'm doing it and I'm saying it very quickly. Now, if you understand all of this, and really this idea makes a lot of sense to you, fantastic. You are going to have really an edge to becoming a fluent speaker much faster. And actually, this will help you develop your speaking confidence much more, because as you learn a new word, you'll begin to have your mind open for learning these other definitions, these other usages of the word, and this is what's going to strengthen your vocabulary. So number one, part of this idea up here about the trick to becoming a fluent speaker is to do everything in English to learn like a native. So if you learn like a native, and this is one way to do that, one of the ways I teach, this is again going to help you become a much more confident fluent speaker. Now, if you'd like to learn more about phrasal verbs and how I can help you do that, I have a fantastic program that teaches you my 3-step system for helping you understand phrasal verbs, and it will actually teach you how to understand and use thousands of them so that you can use this really incredibly important grammar point whenever you're trying to communicate, and you'll sound much more natural and native. If you'd like to learn more about that, you can click on the link in the description above. Again, that's going to give you a fantastic way to develop an understanding of core vocabulary the way natives do, so you communicate like a native. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have any questions or comments, please put them down in the comments section below. Let me know if you'd like to know more, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.